Hashtag, the king's daughter blushed when she realized how humans are built. Hashtag Part 1. First contact. Princess Eloria loved the night sky. While other Aetherians slept, she stood on her tower balcony, watching the stars through her special viewer. Tonight was special. The 3 moons lined up perfectly, something that happened only once every 100 years. As the 3rd moon moved into place, a strange light flashed across the sky. Eloria's viewer showed something new, a hole in space itself. Through this hole came a small ship, smoking and spinning as it fell toward their world. "Father must know about this," she said, her crystal body glowing with excitement. Like all Aetherians, Eloria's skin was clear like glass. Anyone could see the colored lights flowing inside her body. Right now, those lights pulsed bright blue with excitement. King Valerian was not happy to be woken up. His large crystal form towered over his daughter as she told him about the falling ship. "It must be the star visitors from the old stories," Eloria said, her inner lights dancing with joy. The king sighed, making deep purple waves flow through his body. "Send the royal guards to find this ship. If there are visitors, bring them to the palace." Commander Jason Wells did not expect to survive. His small ship had been caught in some kind of space storm during Earth's first mission to the stars. The emergency landing systems had done their job, but just barely. His ship lay half buried in soft purple sand, systems failing one by one. Jason checked his air supply. His spacesuit could keep him alive for 2 days at most. He tried sending a message back to Earth, but something was blocking the signal. Well, no one said being the first human diplomat to deep space would be easy, he said to himself. A strange light outside caught his attention. Through the cracked window, Jason saw what looked like people coming toward him. But these people glowed, and were they transparent? "First contact," he whispered, quickly checking his appearance. He put on his diplomatic badge and opened the emergency exit. The royal guards had never seen anything like the strange ship or its even stranger pilot. The being that stepped out was solid, completely solid. No inner lights showed through its skin. It wore some kind of covering over its entire body and had a clear bubble around its head. "Take it to the king," the guard captain ordered. The royal court went silent when the guards brought in the visitor. Aetherians of all sizes stared at the strange, solid creature. When Jason realized he could breathe the air, he slowly removed his helmet. The court gasped. The visitor had a solid face that didn't flow or change like Aetherian faces. It had strange patches of fur on its head and face. Most shocking of all, no one could see inside it to know what it was feeling or thinking. King Valerian's inner lights turned dark red with suspicion. "What are you?" he demanded. Before Jason could answer, Princess Eloria pushed through the crowd. Her scientific curiosity was too strong to stay back. "I am Commander Jason Wells from planet Earth," Jason said, bowing slightly. "My ship was damaged, and I landed here by accident." The princess moved closer, her crystal eyes studying everything about him. "You're solid all the way through?" she asked, fascinated. Jason nodded. "All humans are. We can't see each other's insides like you can." Eloria's lights flickered with surprise. "How do you know what others are feeling?" "We watch facial expressions, listen to voice tones, and read body language," Jason explained. The king interrupted. "Enough questions, Eloria. We must decide what to do with this human." But Eloria couldn't stop watching the human's face change as he spoke. Humans had so many ways their faces moved. Their eyes, mouths, even the skin on their foreheads made patterns to show feelings. "Father," she said firmly, "I will study this visitor. We can learn much from him." The king's lights swirled with annoyance, but he knew his daughter's scientific mind would not rest until she understood this strange being. "Very well," he agreed reluctantly, "but he is your responsibility." Eloria's entire body glowed bright yellow with happiness, a real alien visitor. And she would be the one to learn all about humans. She had no idea how much this meeting would change her life. and her entire world. Hashtag, the king's daughter blushed when she realized how humans are built. Hashtag part 2, cultural exchange. This will be your room while you stay with us, Princess Eloria said, showing Jason into a large crystal chamber. The walls shimmered with soft light, and strange floating objects hovered near the ceiling. Jason touched one of the walls. It felt warm, almost alive. "Thank you, Princess. This is beautiful. I have many questions for you," Eloria said, her inner lights pulsing with excitement. "I've never met someone from another world before." Jason smiled. "On Earth, we haven't met anyone from other worlds either. You're my first alien, too." Eloria's lights flickered in a pattern Jason couldn't understand. "Alien? What is this word?" "It means someone from another world," Jason explained. "I'm an alien to you, and you're an alien to me." The princess considered this. Interesting. We would say star visitor instead. Over the next few days, Jason and Eloria spent hours together. She showed him the great crystal city that spread out below the palace. Buildings grew from the ground like giant crystals, connected by bridges made of light. Aetherian people flowed through the streets, their transparent bodies glowing with different colors. "Your city is amazing," Jason said. "It looks like it's alive." "It is alive," Eloria explained. "Our buildings grow from special seeds. We shape them with our thoughts as they grow." Jason told Eloria about Earth cities with their steel and glass buildings, cars and trains, parks, and shopping centers. The princess found it hard to understand why humans would build things that weren't alive. "If your buildings aren't alive, how do they know what you need?" she asked. "They don't," Jason admitted. "We have to build them exactly how we want them." One day, Eloria took Jason to her private study room. Inside were strange devices and tools unlike anything on Earth. "I want to learn about human culture," she said. "Will you show me?" Jason used his small computer tablet to show her pictures of Earth. He showed her mountains and oceans, deserts and forests. He showed her cities and farms, schools and homes. Then he played music for her, classical symphonies, rock songs, and folk music from around the world. Eloria's body pulsed with new patterns as she listened. "This sound, it makes me feel strange," she said. "What is its purpose?" "Music doesn't really have a purpose," Jason explained. "We make it because it's beautiful, because it makes us feel things." Eloria's lights dimmed slightly. "You make things just to feel emotions. We don't do that." "What about art? Do you make paintings or sculptures?" Jason asked. The princess shook her head. "Everything we make has a use. Why would we make things that don't do anything?" Jason thought for a moment, then took out his sketchpad. With quick strokes, he drew Eloria's face. It wasn't perfect, but it captured her crystal features and the way her inner lights danced when she was curious. "This has no purpose except to show how I see you," he said, handing her the drawing. Eloria stared at the paper for a long time. Her lights changed to a soft pink color Jason had never seen in her before. "I like this," she said quietly, "even though it does nothing." King Valerian was not happy. From his throne room, he watched his daughter spend more and more time with the human visitor. His advisors brought troubling reports. "The princess has been making useless objects, Your Majesty," one said. "Small things that serve no purpose." Another advisor stepped forward. She asked the royal musicians to play sounds that don't match any traditional patterns. The king's inner lights swirled with dark colors. "This human influence is disrupting her proper development," he said. "She's showing irregular light patterns when near him." "What should we do, Your Majesty?" the first advisor asked. The king thought for a moment, his massive crystal form glowing with deep purple determination. "Watch them closely," he ordered. "If the princess continues to show these strange behaviors, we may need to send the human away." What the king didn't say was his deepest fear, that his daughter might be developing feelings for this solid creature, feelings that had no place in Aetherian society. Hashtag, the king's daughter blushed when she realized how humans are built. Hashtag part 3, the anatomy lesson. After 2 weeks on Aetheria, Jason had learned much about the crystal people. But Princess Eloria was not satisfied with just talking. As a scientist, she wanted to understand exactly how humans worked. "I would like to study your physical form," she told Jason one morning, "if you are willing." Jason hesitated. "What exactly do you want to do?" "Just scanning," she assured him. "No cutting or poking. We Aetherians are curious about bodies we cannot see through." Jason nodded. "That makes sense. On Earth, doctors use machines to see inside people too." "Sure, I'll help with your research." Eloria's laboratory was at the top of the tallest crystal tower. Strange devices hummed and glowed along the walls. In the center stood a flat table surrounded by floating rings. "Please lie down," Eloria said, pointing to the table. Jason did as she asked, lying flat on his back. The princess touched a crystal control panel, and the rings began to circle around his body, glowing with blue light. "Our bodies are very different," Eloria explained as she worked. "Aetherians form from living crystal. Our inner lights show our thoughts and feelings. We cannot hide them." Jason watched her work. "That must make lying difficult." "Lying?" "Oh, saying untrue things." "Yes, it is impossible for us. Our lights would show the truth." Eloria's own lights pulsed blue and green as she studied the scan results. "Fascinating. Your organs are fixed in place. Ours can move around as needed." Images appeared in the air above Jason. Pictures of his skeleton, muscles, and organs. Eloria seemed especially interested in his heart. "This pump, it never stops beating?" she asked. "Not until we die," Jason said. "If it stops for more than a few minutes, we can't survive." Eloria's lights flickered with concern. "What a fragile system." She continued the scan, moving the rings lower. Suddenly, her entire body flashed bright pink, then purple. She stepped back from the control panel. "Is something wrong?" Jason asked, sitting up. I did not expect." Eloria's usually smooth voice sounded shaky. Her lights were pulsing and swirling in a way Jason had never seen before. "Are you okay?" he asked, concerned. The princess turned away, her crystal form still glowing bright pink. "Your reproductive system. It's so different from ours." Jason suddenly understood. "Oh, I'm sorry if that was inappropriate. I should have asked what parts you were scanning." Eloria's lights slowly returned to a calmer blue. "No, I apologize. I should have explained better. Aetherians reproduce by growing new crystals from our own energy. We don't have separate parts for it." "I see," Jason said, trying to sound scientific rather than embarrassed. "So you were surprised by human anatomy?" "Yes," she admitted, "but it explains much about your species. Your biology requires two people to come together to create new life. Perhaps that's why humans value connection so much. It's built into your physical form." Jason had never thought about it that way. "That's a really interesting observation." Unknown to them, one of the king's advisors had been watching. He hurried to the throne room, his lights flashing with urgency. "Your Majesty." The princess and the human were engaged in inappropriate activities. King Valerian's massive form darkened. "Explain." She was scanning his body and showing unusual light patterns, pink and purple waves. "Your Majesty, those are not scientific colors." The king rose from his throne, towering over his advisor. "Pink and purple. Those are the colors of..." He couldn't even say it. "Yes, Your Majesty. Attraction and fascination. The princess is developing emotional responses to the human." King Valerian's lights swirled with anger and concern. "This has gone too far. Prepare the clarification chamber. If my daughter is being influenced by these alien emotions, we must cleanse her system before she changes beyond recognition." "And the human?" the advisor asked. Put him under guard. Tomorrow, we will send him back to wherever he came from." The king's voice was cold and final. What neither the king nor his advisor realized was that Princess Eloria was listening from the shadow of a crystal column. Her lights dimmed to almost nothing as she heard her father's plans. She had to warn Jason, and somehow stop her father from erasing the new feelings she had just begun to discover. Hashtag, the king's daughter blushed when she realized how humans are built. Hashtag Part 4. Royal Disapproval. Princess Eloria hurried through the crystal hallways. Her body barely glowed at all as she tried to stay hidden from the guards. She had to reach Jason before her father's men did. When she arrived at Jason's room, she found him looking at the pictures he had drawn of Etheria's crystal buildings. "Jason, you are in danger," she said, her lights flashing with worry. "My father plans to send you away and put me through clarification." Jason put down his drawings. "Clarification? What's that?" "It's a process to fix irregular patterns in our light system," she explained quickly. "It would remove any emotions my father considers improper. I would forget everything I've learned from you about art, music, and feelings." Jason's face showed shock. "That's terrible. It sounds like brainwashing." "I don't know this word, but yes, it would change who I am," Eloria said. "We must leave the palace tonight." "Leave? Where would we go?" Jason asked. The princess's lights pulsed with determination. "To the ancient temple. I've been studying old records since you arrived. I found something important about our history." While they talked, King Valerian sat on his throne, speaking with the grand scholar of Etheria. "The human's influence on my daughter must be removed," the king said, his massive form dark with anger. "She shows emotional patterns that have not been seen in our people for thousands of years." The grand scholar, an ancient Aetherian with pale blue lights, nodded slowly. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should study these patterns before removing them. In the old texts, there are stories of a time when our people were more expressive." "Those are just stories," the king said dismissively. "Our crystal form is perfect, logical, ordered, and transparent. Humans are chaotic, ruled by emotions they can't even control. Yet they have traveled between stars, just as we have," the scholar pointed out. The king's lights flashed with impatience. "Prepare the clarification chamber for tomorrow. My daughter will be returned to proper Aetherian patterns." As the scholar bowed and left, the king touched a crystal on his throne. "Guard captain, bring the human to me. Now." 4 crystal guards marched toward Jason's room. Their bodies glowed with strict white light, showing their complete loyalty to the king. When they reached the room, the captain pressed his hand to the door. It slid open, revealing nothing. The room was empty. "Search the palace," he ordered, his white light turning red with alarm. Princess Eloria knew many secret passages in the palace. She had explored them as a child, finding ways to escape her royal lessons. Now she led Jason through a narrow crystal tunnel that glowed faintly with their footsteps. "Where does this lead?" Jason whispered. "To the old transportation center," Eloria explained. "From there, we can take a crystal flyer to the ancient temple." They emerged from the tunnel into a large round room. Crystal vehicles shaped like teardrops hung from the ceiling. "These are crystal flyers?" Jason asked, amazed. "Yes, they respond to Aetherian light patterns." The princess touched one, and it detached from the ceiling, floating down to them. "Get in quickly." They climbed into the clear vehicle. Eloria placed her hands on a crystal panel, and her lights flowed into it. The flyer rose and moved toward a large opening in the wall. Just as they reached the opening, the main door to the room burst open. King Valerian himself stood there, his huge form dark with rage. "Eloria, stop this foolishness at once," he roared. The princess looked back at her father, her lights steady and determined. "I'm sorry, father. I must learn the truth about our people." The crystal flyer shot forward into the night sky, leaving the angry king behind. "The temple is far across the crystal forest, Eloria told Jason as they flew over the glittering landscape. We should reach it by morning. Jason watched her strong, determined face as she guided the flyer. Eloria, what do you think we'll find at this temple? The truth, she said simply, about who we were before we became crystal beings, and perhaps who we could be again. The king's daughter blushed when she realized how humans are built. Part 5. Diplomatic crisis. The crystal flyer soared over the glittering forest. Inside, Princess Eloria guided the vessel with practiced hands, while Jason watched the amazing landscape below. Your father will send guards after us, won't he? Jason asked. Eloria's lights pulsed with worry. Yes, he has faster flyers than this one, but I know a way to hide from them. She steered the flyer down into the forest. Huge crystal trees reached up around them, their branches sparkling in the light of the two moons still visible in the sky. We'll travel through the forest instead of above it, she explained. It will take longer, but they won't see us. Back at the palace, King Valerian was furious. His inner lights burned dark red as he spoke to his guard captain. Find them. Use all the royal flyers if you must. Yes, Your Majesty, the captain replied, his white lights showing his obedience. The grand scholar approached the king carefully. Your Majesty, I have troubling news. The princess accessed the ancient records before she left. She was reading about the time before crystal. The king's huge form went completely still. What? Those records are forbidden. She used her royal access codes, the scholar explained. She knows about the transformer. This is worse than I feared, the king said quietly. Captain, you must reach the ancient temple before they do. The human must not learn our greatest secret. As dawn broke over Etheria, something new appeared in the sky. A large ship, much bigger than Jason's small vessel, moved into orbit around the planet. Inside the ship, Captain Elena Chen of the Earth vessel Horizon looked at the sensor readings with concern. Any sign of Commander Wells? She asked her science officer. None, Captain, he replied. But we're picking up unusual crystal structures all over the planet. This civilization is unlike anything we've encountered before. Captain Chen nodded. Send a message to whoever's in charge down there. Tell them we've come peacefully to find our missing officer. In the crystal forest, Jason and Eloria felt their flyer shake suddenly. A strange noise filled the air. What's that? Jason asked, covering his ears. Eloria's lights flickered with confusion. I don't know. It's coming through all crystal frequencies. Then Jason recognized the pattern. It's a communication signal. From Earth, my people must have come looking for me. Eloria adjusted some controls on the flyer, and a voice came through. Earth vessel Horizon to planet surface. We are searching for Commander Jason Wells. Please respond if you have information. Jason's face lit up with excitement. We need to answer them. We can't, Eloria said sadly. This flyer can't send signals that far. Only the royal palace has that power. Jason frowned. Then my people will talk to your father first. That could be very bad, Eloria warned. If your people demand your return, it will only make my father more angry. He might tell them you crashed and died. We need to reach the temple quickly, Jason decided. What's this secret your father is so worried about? Eloria's lights shifted to a thoughtful blue. According to the old records, Aetherians weren't always crystal beings. Something happened thousands of years ago. A great change. The records mention a device called the transformer. It's kept in the ancient temple. And you think this transformer changed your people into crystal beings? Jason asked. Yes. And if I'm right, the change wasn't just physical. It changed how we think and feel too. Her lights pulsed with excitement. Jason, what if my people once had emotions like humans do? What if we chose to give them up? Before Jason could answer, a bright light shone down from above. 5 royal guard flyers surrounded them, each carrying 4 crystal guards with weapons ready. Princess Eloria. A guard's voice boomed. By order of King Valerian, you will return to the palace immediately. The human will be given to his people and sent away from our world forever. Eloria's lights showed her determination as she gripped the controls tighter. We're almost at the temple, she whispered to Jason. Hold on tightly. She pushed the flyer to its top speed, diving between two guard vessels. The chase was on, and the ancient temple was now visible in the distance, a massive crystal pyramid glowing with old power. Hashtag, the king's daughter blushed when she realized how humans are built. Hashtag part 6. Revelation. Eloria's hands moved quickly over the controls. The small crystal flyer dipped and swerved between the trees, trying to escape the royal guards. They're faster than us, she said, her lights flashing with worry. But I know this forest better than they do. Jason held on tight as the flyer made a sharp turn around a massive crystal tree. Two guard flyers crashed into the branches behind them, sending sparkles of crystal dust into the air. Good flying, Jason said, impressed. Eloria's lights glowed briefly with pride. The temple is just ahead. We need to reach the entrance before they can surround us. The ancient temple rose before them, a huge pyramid made of dark purple crystal. Unlike the shining, transparent buildings of the city, this structure was old and mysterious, with strange carvings covering its surface. Eloria landed the flyer at the base of the temple. Quickly, they jumped out and ran toward a tall doorway. Behind them, the remaining guard flyers were landing. Crystal guards with glowing weapons rushed forward. Stop in the name of the king, they shouted. Jason and Eloria reached the doorway just in time. Once inside, Eloria pressed her hand to a crystal panel, and the huge doors closed behind them. That won't hold them for long, she said. We need to find the central chamber. In orbit above the planet, Captain Chen was growing frustrated. Her communications officer shook his head. Still no response from the planet, Captain. Keep trying, she ordered, and prepare a shuttle. I'm going down there myself to find Commander Wells. Her science officer looked worried. Captain, our sensors show unusual energy readings from the surface. Something big is happening down there. Inside the temple, Jason and Eloria hurried through dark hallways, lit only by the princess's glowing body. The walls were covered with images Jason couldn't understand. Pictures carved into the crystal showing strange beings. What are these? He asked, touching one of the carvings. Our ancestors, Eloria explained, her voice filled with wonder. Look at them, Jason. They're not transparent. Jason studied the carvings more carefully. They showed people who looked solid, with expressive faces showing happiness, sadness, and love. They were dancing, creating art, and embracing one another. They look more like humans, he said softly. Eloria nodded, her lights pulsing with excitement. This confirms what I found in the ancient records. Aetherians weren't always crystal beings. A loud boom echoed through the hallway. The guards were breaking through the door. We need to hurry, Eloria said, pulling Jason forward. They reached a large round chamber in the center of the temple. In the middle stood a massive crystal device, a tall column with branches reaching to the ceiling, pulsing with old power. The transformer, Eloria whispered with awe. Jason walked around the device. What does it do? Before Eloria could answer, the doors to the chamber burst open. King Valerian himself strode in, his huge crystal form dark with anger. Royal guards followed behind him. Eloria, step away from that device, the king commanded. Father, look around you. Eloria gestured to the walls, which were covered with more carvings. These are our ancestors. This is who we were before. The king's lights flickered briefly as he glanced at the images. Those are just stories, myths from a primitive time. No, Father, the records are clear. Eloria's voice grew stronger. 10,000 years ago, our world faced a terrible disaster, a radiation storm that was killing our people. Our scientists created the transformer to change our bodies to crystal form so we could survive. She pointed to a series of carvings showing people entering the transformer and emerging as crystal beings. It saved our species, she continued, but it did more than change our bodies. It changed our minds too. It removed our emotions to make us more logical, more controlled. The king's massive form seemed to dim slightly. Those emotions caused nothing but trouble. War, conflict, chaos, but also art, music, love, and creativity. Eloria countered. Father, the radiation is long gone. We don't need to stay this way anymore. Jason watched as the king stood silently, his lights showing conflicting patterns. For the first time, he seemed uncertain. Then a new sound filled the air, the whine of engines outside the temple. A voice came through all their crystal communications. This is Captain Elena Chen of the Earth vessel Horizon. We have landed outside and request peaceful entry to retrieve our crew member. The humans had arrived. Hashtag, the king's daughter blushed when she realized how humans are built. Hashtag part 7. Choice. The temple chamber grew quiet. Everyone could hear the Earth ship landing outside. Your people have come for you, Eloria said to Jason with mixed feelings in her lights. King Valerian turned to his guards. Bring the Earth visitors here. They should see this. Jason stepped forward, surprised. You're letting them in. The king's lights showed deep blue thought patterns. If what my daughter says is true, this moment is important for all of us. Your people should be part of it. A few minutes later, Captain Chen entered the chamber with 2 officers. She smiled when she saw Jason. Commander Wells, thank goodness you're alive. Captain, Jason greeted her with a nod. I'd like you to meet Princess Eloria and King Valerian of Etheria. Captain Chen looked with wonder at the crystal beings. Amazing. We've never encountered a species like yours before. And we have never seen beings like you, King Valerian said. But it seems we may have once been more similar than I thought. Eloria moved closer to the transformer device. Father, I've been studying these controls. The transformer was designed to work in both directions. It changed us to crystal form, but it can also restore us. The king's massive form shimmered with concern. Restore us? To what we were before? That would be dangerous. Not completely, Eloria explained. Look at these settings. We can adjust how much we change. Her lights pulsed with excitement. We could keep our crystal bodies but regain some of our emotional capacity. Captain Chen watched with interest. Your people deliberately suppressed your emotions. It was necessary for survival, the king said. Emotions made us unstable during the radiation crisis. Jason turned to Eloria. What are you suggesting? A test, she said simply. Her lights shifted to a determined pattern. I will use the transformer on myself, just enough to restore some emotional capacity while keeping my crystal form. Eloria. No, the king moved forward. It's too dangerous. It's my choice, father. The princess stood tall, her lights steady and clear. I study the old records. I know how to use it safely. Captain Chen stepped closer to Jason. What's happening here? They're at a turning point in their history, Jason explained quietly. Eloria discovered that their ancestors changed their bodies and minds to survive a disaster. Now she wants to see if they can reclaim some of what they lost. Eloria approached a crystal panel on the transformer. I won't change completely, just enough to show what's possible. Before anyone could stop her, she placed her hands on the panel. The transformer began to hum and glow. Beams of light shot out from it, surrounding Eloria's crystal form. Everyone watched in amazement as her body changed. She remained crystal, still transparent, but her form became slightly more solid. Her inner lights grew brighter and more complex, showing patterns no one had seen before. When the light faded, Eloria stepped away from the transformer. She looked at her hands, then at her father. I feel so much more, she said, her voice filled with wonder. Her face, once a simple crystal surface, now showed clear expressions. Joy, wonder, and hope shone in her features. Does it hurt? The king asked, concerned. No, father. It's beautiful. Tears, actual crystal tears, formed in her eyes. I still have my knowledge, my memories, my logic. But now I also feel everything so clearly. She turned to Jason, and her body glowed with a warm golden light. This is how you feel all the time, isn't it? So much emotion, so much connection. Jason smiled. Yes, it's what makes us human. The king moved closer to his daughter, studying her new form. His lights showed confusion, but also curiosity. You're still my daughter, he said softly. Yes, father, just more complete. Eloria looked around at everyone. Her father, the guards, Jason, and the Earth visitors. This is a choice each Aetherian should be able to make for themselves. Not complete change, but a balance between what we were and what we've become. Captain Chen looked at King Valerian. Your Majesty, it seems your people are at a crossroads. The king's lights shifted slowly from dark blue to a lighter, clearer shade. Yes, and perhaps it is time for a new path. Hashtag, the king's daughter blushed when she realized how humans are built. Hashtag part 8, New Beginning. 1 year had passed since the day in the ancient temple. Aetheria had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Jason stood on a crystal balcony, looking out over the city. The buildings still grew from the ground like giant crystals, but now many of them showed colors and patterns that served no purpose except to be beautiful. Enjoying the view, Eloria asked as she joined him. Her crystal form glowed with warm golden light. She still looked like an Aetherian, transparent, and made of living crystal, but her face now showed clear expressions. Today, she was smiling. It's amazing how much has changed, Jason said. Your people have created so much art in just 1 year. After that day in the temple, King Valerian had made a surprising decision. He announced that all Aetherians would have a choice. They could remain as they were, or they could use the carefully adjusted transformer to regain some of their emotional capacity. About half the population had chosen to change, including the king himself. The rest preferred to stay as they were, valuing their pure logic and unchanging ways. Both paths are valid, Eloria had insisted, and her father had agreed. Now Jason and Eloria watched as a new building grew in the center of the city, the first Earth embassy on Aetheria. Captain Chen says 20 more human diplomats will arrive next month, Jason told her, and 5 Aetherians have been chosen to visit Earth. Eloria's lights showed her excitement. Father is one of them. Can you imagine? The king himself wants to see your world. He's changed a lot, Jason observed. We all have, Eloria said, but we kept the best parts of who we were while growing into something new. A crystal flying vehicle approached the balcony. Inside was Captain Chen, now the official Earth ambassador to Aetheria. Are you two ready for the ceremony? She called as the vehicle hovered nearby. Jason nodded. We'll be right there. Today was the opening of the first Aetherian Art Academy in 10,000 years. King Valerian himself would cut the crystal ribbon. Art, music, and creative expression were returning to Aetherian society, alongside their impressive science and technology. As they climbed into the waiting flyer, Eloria's hand briefly touched Jason's. Her lights shifted to that now familiar pink color, the Aetherian equivalent of a blush. I still remember the day we met, she said softly, when I first saw how differently humans are built. Jason smiled. You were so embarrassed during that anatomy scan. I didn't understand then, she admitted. Humans and Aetherians look very different on the outside. But inside, we share something important. The need to connect with others, to create, to feel. The crystal flyer took them to the new academy where a crowd had gathered. King Valerian stood at the entrance, his massive form now showing shades of light that would have been impossible a year ago. Today we honor both our past and our future, the king announced to the crowd. For 10,000 years, we focused only on survival and logic. We forgot the joy of creation. Today we remember. He cut the crystal ribbon, and music filled the air. a new kind of music combining Aetherian crystal harmonics with human melodies. Inside the academy, the main hall held a special exhibit. On one wall hung Jason's first drawing of Eloria. On the opposite wall was Eloria's first attempt at art, a crystal sculpture showing two figures, one human and one Aetherian, reaching toward each other. It's called connection, she explained to a group of young Aetherians whose lights pulsed with curiosity. Sometimes the greatest discoveries come when we learn how different we are from others, but choose to connect anyway. Jason watched her with pride. The princess who had once blushed at human anatomy had helped change her entire world. And in the process, humans had learned something too, that beneath all their differences, connection was what mattered most. As Eloria finished speaking, she caught Jason's eye across the room. Her crystal form glowed with that special golden light she reserved just for him. Different species, different biology, different worlds, but the same heart.